stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet. Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforge series.
Last time, actually the last couple of times really, I've been enjoying some of the world building of this. However, I gotta be honest, it's been losing a little bit of the kind of pacing that I want. We haven't been accomplishing that much per session, and it's falling behind sort of the genre expectations I have. So with that in mind, let's dive right back into this so we can get a little bit more rolling, a little bit more action. So last time, Mina showed Emile to the underground, a series of tunnels and like utility corridors that would connect all of the station in this unseen walkway area that carried a lot of power. They mapped it out, and Emile was able to determine that the likely place that he wants to go in order to manipulate the jump calculations of this station is down below. But the catch is that in order to get there, you have to take an elevator from the penthouse of the original builder of this ship, Kierra Thorne. Mina had a lot of reverence for him, having designed this place and cobbled it together out of scraps of various other different ships. When they got up there, however, Emile was able to determine that it seems like Kierra Thorne wasn't nearly as bothered by the presence of Lastech as certainly as Mina is. Now, Emile doesn't know specifically why, but we determined that it's because Kierra has a real hang-up about his visual appearance and is trying desperately to try and de-age himself, and thinks that Lastech might be able to help him in that endeavor. So he was initially not especially open to talking about the situation, especially as the two of them are up there late at night when most people are asleep. However, Emile was able to convince Kierra to let him into the private area of the penthouse, saying that he had information about Lastech that he was not willing to share over a recorded line, as they were previously talking over a remote viewing system. Emile wasn't willing to share it where his audio might be recorded for legal reasons, but he had interesting, juicy things to say if only he could be let into the private quarters. And we left off with Kierra Thorne indeed letting Emile and Mina in, after of course Emile took off his own computer and left it behind. However, little did Kierra Thorne know, Emile does still have a tiny recording device in the very corner of his eye, and he's able to sneak that in, but we pick up from that moment as Emile and Mina head into the living quarters of Kierra Thorne. And let's do something we haven't done in a little while here. Let's make a little bit of a vignette. I want to see from Thorne's perspective. I want to give him an edge here. Like, he's designed this entire ship. This is like his lair. Protection wasn't exactly his top priority, but still he'd be able to have control over this environment. So I'm going to roll in a descriptor and focus to get an idea of what kind of secret gadget or something might he have. What I want to know what his edge is here that he could fall back on if Emile does something out of line. And I pull up Ensnaring Void, which definitely sounds like it could work well for a trap. Literally, I mean, that makes it seem like a kind of antimatter field or something like that. Or basically, I think that Kierra Thorne's going to be sitting at a desk, and we see during this little vignette, it's a really quick and simple one, but he's sitting at his desk in this kind of dimly lit room. He's just got it set up so he's kind of silhouetted. You can't see his face that well. It's not full on that he's a complete silhouette, but just the lighting in here is done to make sure you can't see him very well. And we see his hand just uncover a button and give it a quick test. He pushes it. We see the area in front of the desk, the kind of rest of the open room that's there, starts crackling with this kind of yellowy orb of energy that we get the impression anyway that if you were caught in that field, it'll be very hard to move. I don't think it would necessarily be painful, but it does make a kind of stasis field that's not perfect, but it very much slows your action when you're in there. And then, despite the lighting in the room, we get get close enough on his face to see his lips curl into a smile. And at this kind of closeness, to be able to see that despite the lighting, we can also see just some of the scars on his face, the series of facelifts and little microsurgeries that have happened to try and bring him back to youth at this distance are hard to ignore. And with that done, let's give ourselves the +1 momentum that making the begin a session move gives us and get right back into the action. So Emile and Mina are proceeding a little bit cautiously through a hallway that I think its vanity is really painting the walls of this place. We definitely see a lot of kind of commemorating one's own accomplishments and self-portraiture and just all kinds of things from like a man living in the past. It's not all completely, it's not all just like pictures of himself, but the scrutinizing eye can see that like this little hallway is definitely a lot of just kind of smelling one's own farts. And I think we get a moment to see Mina sort of registering that a little bit, and like she still has a mountain of respect for this person. But we see her expression change that little bit as she kind of looks around and gets that sense of like, wow, this is all really, really self-serving. It just gives it a little bit more of a sadness that wasn't there outside. And we register her face trying to like not pay attention to it as much. But eventually at the end of this hallway, they come upon a relatively ornate door carved out of wood, which is certainly a bit atypical on a ship like this. Emile opens the door to reveal a very classic style sort of office with a lot of wooden furniture and lush surfaces. There's a like velvet couch off to the side. And of course, the heavy, thick statement piece of a desk that's towards the middle of the room. We see the partial silhouette of Kierra Thorne sitting at the desk. I think we can see his hands better because there's like an old style like desk lamp with a green glass shade that's already been flicked on, and so we can see the surface of the desk a little bit better and kind of the gestures that he will be making with his hands. And we can just make out that behind him, I see just like a full wall of bookshelves that are filled with all kinds of old books and rolled up kind of like architecture drawings, stuff like that. Just all kinds of documentation along this wall spanning like floor to ceiling bookcase. And we can deduce that because it's been pretty linear to get to this point, and there's been no sign of the elevator that would have to get one down into the down below, like the sub underground, we can deduce that the elevator is concealed somewhere within this room, probably behind that bookcase, that there's some means of way to get part of it to slide aside. There are no seats on this side of the desk. I think there's the couch off to the side, but if you were to have kind of like a face-to-face with Kierra Thorne, I envision this a lot like talking with Mr. Burns. Like, he's sitting there at the desk, you're standing in a large opening. And like Mr. Burns, there's indeed the button to try and make a trap happen at you. And Emile, I think, is, he's none the wiser about any of that. He certainly doesn't have his AR system, like, scanning the room and letting him know anything about, like, dangers that he might not have otherwise detected with his regular human vision around the room. He doesn't pick up on any of that, so I think he and Mina both are just kind of standing there in that rough area where we saw the ensnaring void take over. Mina a half step to a full step behind Emile, simply because she's still a little bit embarrassed to kind of meet a hero and doesn't want to be, and just is passively sort of making choices like that downplay her importance. Kierra starts off and says, "Well, let's not beat around it. It's already plenty late. What exactly did you have to share with me about your experiences with Lastech?" And Emile just wants to confirm really quickly, like, you have absolutely nothing in here that's recording anything. There are no cameras running, no microphones, nothing like that. And Kierra sort of like gestures around with his hands, almost to say, like, take a look. And Emile says, "No, I just want to hear you say it. There are no cameras or microphones recording any of this right now." And Thorn relents. "If it's that important to you, yes. I verify on my honor that I have nothing recording this conversation. Now, would you please get on with it? You know, it's kind of interesting to me. I was thinking while role-playing him there, like, would he call him, like, Mr. Spencer or anything? And I was like, I don't remember if Emile has ever introduced himself, because I know Thorn never asked for his name. So I think Thorn just, like, doesn't care enough. And it's not important to him that Emile hasn't introduced himself. And I don't think Emile is going to specifically try and change that either. So Emile just says, all right, I believe you. Actually, I don't know, why don't we make our first roll to, like, I haven't been making as many rolls in the last few sessions, and let's get this going. I want to secure an advantage here with my wits, just to have a best idea of, like, is this guy lying? Is there indeed a recording device? Because obviously, like, that could be a really big problem. So let's indeed roll this. I've got nothing in particular helping me out here, but it is a wits roll. So we get, starting off with a strong hit with a match, and a double 6 match at that. So I succeed, give myself 2 more momentum. I get a +1 on my next move. And now what does the match indicate? So first of all, let's determine, like, what is the truth here? I'm just going to leave this up to random chance as well. The fate move of Ask the Oracle, setting this at just a 50-50 on, is Thorn secretly recording this some way or another? And 50-50 says yes, he is. I think Emile is going to pick up on the fact that Thorn's hands are shifting around a little bit too nervously. And we're going to fold this into the match because his hands are not only shifting around a little bit nervously, but it causes Emile to look a little bit more closely at where his hands are. And we're going to say that that button that makes the ensnaring void happen, there's like a mug sitting on the desk. And when you look closely at it, you can see that it's not actually meant to move or be used. You flip it up and it has a hollow underneath that has the button in it. And so when he was practicing earlier, it was you flip the mug up on its hinge and then you hit the button underneath it. And as he's shifting his hands around nervously, not only does Emile determine that, like, he doesn't know where the recording device is, or whether it's just audio or also has video. He doesn't know where that is, but he does see that there's a hinge on that mug, and he puts it all together and recognizes, like, because it's a full double 6 match, I think Emile is going to be able to determine, like, that mug is meant to conceal something. And based on the psychology of it all, he figures it's some kind of a trap. Now, he has no way to possibly know exactly what the trap does. He just doesn't have enough information, but he recognizes there's a trap available to Kierra if ever he flips up that mug and slams a button or does something like that. So let's see. What does Emile do when he realizes he is being recorded? I think perhaps he's going to just call Thorn out on this. He takes a deep breath and says, you know, I really took you for a little bit more of an honorable man than that. And of course, there's an irony here that Emile has his own recording device that is actually going right now. Like, he totally has the little thing in his eye recording as kind of a cover your own ass thing. He's being a complete hypocrite about this, but he goes, I really thought I could count on you to be a little bit more honorable than that. Come on. You're the one who's been saying, don't waste our time here, by making sure that I can't actually tell you the important things I need to say by recording this conversation. You're the one who's wasting our time. Do not try to lie to me. I know you have it going. Shut it down. I want to see you shut it down. Only then am I going to talk. And let's do this as a compel roll. And it definitely makes sense how the last secure an advantage would be giving me a +1 on this because he knows he's being lied to. So compel, I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think this is getting closer to iron than the others. I'm not lying or swindling, because this isn't about the fact that I've got my own recording device going. And it's definitely not just, like, it's maybe bartering, but I'm not charming or pacifying or encouraging. Like, it's nothing like that. This feels closer to iron than anything, so I'm glad I have that +1. Rolling it gives me... Okay, I've got a weak hit that I could make into a strong hit through momentum. The difference will basically be, is there a condition or not? I think I'm going to keep this and allow I'm going to take the +1 momentum from a weak hit. I just need to figure out what is the demand or complication. Oh, I mean, what makes most sense to me is perhaps, Thorn is also plenty perceptive in here, and he picks up on the fact that Emile's got his own recording device. So he goes, I simply thought that we were going to be coming at equal positioning on this conversation. After all, I'm hardly the only one surreptitiously recording what's going on now, am I? And Mina doesn't know that Emile snuck anything in, so I think she's a little bit confused by it, but Emile just kind of chuckles a little bit and goes, all right, very good, very good. So I suppose if we both watch each other turn off our own recording devices, that'll work for it? I believe that keeps the proper balance that I've just described. You do yours and I'll do mine. After all, I would not want it on record exactly where my recording implements are. So Emile is willing to agree to that. He will turn off his eyepiece and, God, I wonder how Thorn was able to pick that up. Let's establish here that the reason Thorn is able to pick up on that kind of detail is that he probably does have some amount of cybernetic implants. Like his eyes, they're definitely not just regular old man eyes anymore. They've been enhanced. I mean, he's trying to preserve his youth and be better than what he is. So he's got these mechanical eyes that are able to zoom in and pick up on kind of minute details like that. Who knows what else they might be able to see. But Emile, indeed, I think it's a little bit unnerving to watch for some people who are a little bit squeamish, but it's in the corner of his eye and he's able to kind of pull his eyelid aside a little bit and then like hit this sort of micro switch and get it to turn off. He probably was able to do it before without Mina noticing by kind of like, it looked a little bit like he's just rubbing at his eyes. You can do it subtly, but so he turns it off and certainly says, all right, now you. And Thorn will, of course, abide by the rolls of those dice. And he will... Let's see. I guess I didn't make part of the demands that Emile would, like, turn around or something and not see where the thing was, just that he wouldn't record it. So I guess Emile will see... Let's roll on an Oracle. I'm going to roll Descriptor and Focus to get an inspiration for, like, where in the room is this recording device hidden? And I pull up Dead and Vault, which certainly makes me think of a kind of like hollow in the room somewhere, like an alcove. I mean, where my mind initially turns is in the area where the elevator is. And why don't we just go with that to keep this moving? Like, Thorn indeed stands up and kind of like shuffles on over to the back wall where there's all the books. Thorn pulls back a book. There's an audible click. After he does that, he pushes in another book, which makes kind of a handhold, which he can use to then slide open, like just this one shelf of the book kind of slides aside out of the way, and it reveals this opening where there's just like this floating camera, this like orb with a lens on the front of it that is suspended there and it's just recording, and you see Thorn reach his hand in there and just flip it off. And then after that, he slides the shelf back into place. And through the benefit of seeing a little bit better where specifically the camera is, now Emile is better able to see, like, oh yeah, all the way back in the room, like there is that part of the bookshelf that like, it looks like a book, but he sees like a big O on the spine that now from the benefit of knowing what to look for, you can tell like, oh yeah, there's totally like light can pass through that. That's not just a full-on book. There's a hole there, a little peeping hole. And Kierra Thorne sits back down and says, are we copacetic now? And let's see, I think we're good enough on that. Now, what is Emile going to do to prepare for the fact he knows there's a trap, but he doesn't know what it's going to do. And he doesn't know like the positioning of that he needs to be aware of or anything like that. I think he's just going to be extra mindful of like watching Thorn's hands, and like if they ever get near the cup, he knows, like, will give him the opportunity to maybe react ahead of time because he knows something's up with there. But he stands there in the opening and says, okay, let me tell you a little bit about Lastech and my history with them. As you're well aware, obviously, Lastech makes quite the business in spacefaring technology and is always looking for an edge on how to better get around the galaxies quicker, more efficiently, more cost effectively. What new things can they add into starships? When I was working there, they were working on some really cutting edge shit. Things that have certainly not hit the market yet. It could still be years before it does. I don't know. Preliminary research happening. But up until this point, ships have had to travel the distance between point A and point B. Yes, there are warp calculations that make that much more complicated and shorten the distance, but there's still a distance that has to be traveled. When I was there, Lastech was working on true teleportation. And I think even in the darkness, we can see Thorn's eyes widening and say, "Very intriguing. I do not see why this is something to be fearful of, though, and why this means I shouldn't do business with them." I'm getting there. Obviously, this sort of technology takes a lot of testing, and while yes, it would be a great boon to be able to have starships that are able to do that, it is also incredibly expensive. And the people in charge were trying to cut through that process as quickly as possible, cutting all of the corners, especially those around safety. They made margins that I am definitely not comfortable with and had to walk away from for the sake of my own conscience. I saw the tests. I saw them shredding the results of the mutations that were happening to organics that went through. They conveniently ignored things as outliers that definitely were not, and then refused to look into them further. And it is my firm belief that they will take this attitude of uncaring and apply it to you and everybody here. In fact, I would go so far as to say a station of this size that travels around everywhere, if Lastech took over this place, they would be looking to cut the cost of having to move from marketplace to marketplace that Hyperion does. And my best guess would be they would be trying to implement this teleportation technology far too early into Hyperion. They'd let you be the test case because they don't care. Worst that happens, all of you die and they no longer have to consider you and worry about you possibly becoming any kind of competition. They don't care. And so I urge you, consider my words. Recognize that your own safety is on the line. Once you make a deal with Lastech, if you sign over Hyperion, your life's work, they're going to do everything they can to make it profitable. What I can guarantee is that they're not going to care if it's dangerous. Now, this one is a compel move that I think is more about encouraging, or like this is more of a heart roll because Emile is appealing to the emotion here of like, you need to save yourself and the people you care about. This is a bad idea. He's just trying to convince him, do not work with Lastech. Now, in fairness, he did not lump into that any manner of like, you need to show me, like, help me take them down or anything like that. That's going to be something separate. But first things first, he just needs to compel him, like, you don't want to work with Lastech. It's just a bad idea. So let's make that additional compel roll, this time with heart. There are no adds to it. And the results are... All right, we get a weak hit, rolling a 10 and a 1 on the challenge dice. Nothing I can do about it, even though I have high momentum. Once again, this means that he'll agree, but it means that there's going to be a demand or complication. So I set my momentum at 9 because I do get +1 momentum from that. So what is the demand or complication here? How can I frequently do it as demands. Can I make this a complication? Ooh, what if... Okay, I kind of like this as a complication. What if it turns out Emile has one more recording device on him that he didn't realize because he didn't put it there? When he first talked to Deuce, on his way out, we get like a flashback to he's walking out of the office and one of the Lastech employees escorting him out puts a quick hand on his shoulder to help kind of push him out of the room. Emile does not notice it. And it's, on the back of his shoulder, so even the cyber eyes of Kierra Thorne did not notice that there is this micro recording device here. And so the complication is that Lastech knows that Emile gave out all of these company secrets. Like Deuce isn't going to come up on a speaker and chastise Emile right in this moment or anything, but Lastech knows. And moving forward, that may be a problem. Emile has broken his NDA and is in some huge legal trouble with a giant corporation. And so clearly Emile has come at this from the right approach. He's gotten Thorn to consider his own mortality here. And so Thorn says, "Well, very well. I won't make any deals with Lastech. Fine. Is that all? Was that really something so imminently needed as to happen right now at this hour?" Emile says, "Sir, there's more. It is vitally important that we put an end to this. Perhaps Hyperion is able to stall for now, but Lastech is going to continue making this place worse until you have to deal with the issue. I have a plan, however. If you give me consistent access to the code that runs the jump drive of this station, I can change it so that it no longer uses their patented model, and thus their legal claims over Hyperion would be moot. They'd have to leave." We cut for a moment to see Deuce in their office registering all of this information and immediately going into the paperwork to pulling up that patent and checking into what Emile was talking about and registering with a solid fist on the table that leaves a dent in there that yeah, Emile has discovered this loophole and Deuce recognizes that it is viable and that something needs to be done about it. We cut back to Emile though, saying, "I have the skill. It'll take me time, but I can rewrite that code. There are other open source models out there. I can change it just enough to be like that Hyperion will no longer be under the auspices of Lastech technology. Lastech will no longer have any claim to the technology that Hyperion uses. You'll be free. But to my understanding, that means I'm going to need access to your private elevator. And it's nothing I can do just in one day. I'm going to have to come here day after day after day. It's a lot of work. Is that a deal we can strike? Will you let me save your station and put an end to all of this nonsense?" And again, we get a moment of we cut back to Deuce, who's in the middle of having a little bit of a tantrum right now, just knocking shit off his desk. But then Emile mentions the private elevator, and Deuce stops and starts listening intently to everything Emile is about to say. We go back to Emile. "So what do you say? Can we strike that deal? Will you let me save Hyperion?" And this is one more compel roll, again with heart here. We got a nice high momentum. I've got a good feeling about this, but let's see. Okay, and I've got a weak hit that I could turn into a strong hit if I burn momentum, but I don't know if I necessarily want to burn that much. I think I'm willing to... I'll take the +1 momentum from a weak hit, setting me all the way at the maximum, and we just need to figure out the demand or complication. And we could just continue with the complication here being more Deuce-related stuff, that, Thorn is okay with all of this. The complication is that Deuce is going to learn completely about the fact that the location of the jump drive code down below. And so the way that happens is that Thorn says, "I believe you, boy. I believe that you mean what you say and that you plan to do what you state. You do not seem to have any ill agenda here, and so I would be quite the fool to stop you. Yes, anytime you wish, you will be able to come up here. I will verify it is only you and will let you into this back area, at which point you may use the elevator and reach the jump computer down in the deep bowels of the ship." And then there's no time to waste. Show me the elevator that I might go down there and get started right away. And so there's a similar moment to the sliding panel from the bookshelf before, where there's a different couple of books that are done in a different section that similarly opens up, an entire bookshelf slides aside on casters behind another one after it's been inset, and it reveals a small little alcove that basically just has an elevator in it. And Thorn shows Emile to this elevator. It's very simply operated. There's just kind of a simple pad there. And Thorn gives him the access code to be able to turn on the elevator. And so all of the complication as far as what Lastech has learned from this is they've got a rough idea of where the jump computer is, and they know Emile's plan. They know enough to be able to maybe search around outside and try and cut their way in if they wanted to get in that way. But they do also know there's access via an elevator, and I think they do overhear the code that Thorn says. So if they got access to the elevator, they could get down there that way. And certainly they know Kierra Thorne is a person of great importance. All of that is in the complication, and definitely that Lastech is going to be acting on this right away with they are going to try and stop Emile from being able to pull this off. Now, I am going to give myself a pip of progress as Emile punches in the code and heads down below. I think at this point, Mina is going to accept that, if Thorn has accepted Emile, then that's good enough. And so Mina is going to leave him behind to go, hit the hay. I mean, it's pretty late, and say, "Well, Mr. Spencer, glad to have been of help. It seems that you can be off on your way now. Glad to have been of help. I hope you're successful in everything you're trying to do, but I got a long day tomorrow getting to work on your ship. So I wish you good luck. I'm heading out of here. You know the way back." And Emile says to Mina, "I can't thank you enough. You made this possible. And a year from now, when Hyperion is still belonging to the people, you can hold your head up high knowing that you were one of the people that made that possible." And then Emile takes the elevator down. And I give myself the pip of progress on bringing an end to the negotiations of Hyperion. This fills in 6 out of the 10 boxes. Emile is shunted down below into just, it's like a big server room. It's just it's lots of just racks and racks of blinking lights and boxes and stuff in here. Tech gear with a terminal to be able to access things. I think there is also a heavy metal door that leads into a much, much larger chamber. There's a window in this door that you can see through that it opens up into this huge warehouse-sized room that holds these 2 just gigantic turbine-looking things side by side that are connected through all kinds of thick cabling, and they're not on right now, but it is clear to anybody who knows their way around starships or gear or anything, these are the jump drives. But Emile's interest is very much in the computer itself. All right, so we have 2 kind of competing prolonged actions happening here. We've got, on the one hand, Emile, who's going to be taking a long time, day after day, coming down here to work on this code. This is quite a project. This would be on the order of probably at least a week to be able to even haphazardly change out this jump code. Now, granted, I think Emile's first priority is just stripping anything that Lastech has on it, and then he can kind of make it make sense later. But even that's going to take, days and days, probably a good week to do. On the other side, you have Lastech, who knows that Emile is up to this, but they don't know exactly where. They just know roughly where to look. And they'd be doing their own research on the outside to try and find out, where is this secret compartment exactly, so they can get there and try and stop Emile from being, lock him out from the code, keep it, or at least get a sort of snapshot of what it was, because they don't have the proof exactly. If they're going to have this lawsuit, they need to be able to get access to that room, or at the very least stop Emile from having access. So we are going to do this as a full formal scene challenge, where Emile is going to be trying to fill up 10 boxes of progress on his attempt to change out the code versus a 6-segment clock, because I think they're indeed on relatively equal footing. They both have advantages and disadvantages, both Lastech and Emile. Now, this is not going to be just a narrow moment of time. This is going to take place over really kind of a prolonged montage of scenes. We're going to zoom out quite a bit. We're going to take actions that are not only Emile in this room right now, but they may also be related to just other things he's doing on the station as he makes progress towards this goal over the days and potentially weeks. And let's start that off. So I'm going to make a new progress track for this. It's going to work like a formidable track because that's how scene challenges work. So this will represent Emile's changing of the jump code. And we have a 6-segment tension clock. And let's start off this first one with a face danger scene challenge mode. What this is Emile first needs to break through some of the security of the jump code, because sure, there's the physical security of just separating it down here, but also there's still technological just lockouts and protocols that are going to try to kind of counter hack anybody who's getting in there. Like, he wasn't given passcode information or anything like that. Either Thorn doesn't have it to give to him or wasn't comfortable giving it or whatever. Like, Emile needs to do some of the legwork himself to just kind of get in the first place, to be able to access something as root to this all as just like being able to manipulate the jump code. Like, that's a huge deal. Oh, you know what it is? Like, Emile has access to the computer system, but if he wants to edit the jump code itself, like, that is something locked out by Lastech. Like, that's their own security protocols that are keeping them. It's not even something Hyperion set up. There are just a lot of things that try and get you to not, fuck up the Windows folder or that rough equivalent. Like, you should not be manipulating this. And so Emile has to break his way into that against Lastech's old security. Now, he has a +1 from his tech asset, absolutely. I would almost give him an additional +1 from his past, just from like, he worked at Lastech in probably this sort of capacity. Like, he probably knows a thing or two about how this is set up, but really that's basically the same as his tech asset. Like, that is that +1. His history lets him know how to work through these kinds of systems. So we're going to make a face danger with wits and a +1, and let's see what happens. We're probably going to start off well because I've also got great momentum. Okay, we're going to start with a weak hit, and one of the dice was a 10, so I can't even burn my momentum to make that better. So I'm successful in mark progress, but I also encounter a complication or setback, envision what occurs, and fill a clock segment. So I marked my first box out of 10, but Lastech marks their first pip out of 6. So I'm able to break in, but I think what the complication or setback is that when Emile breaks through this security, because it is Lastech proprietary stuff, perhaps there is a flag on that it's happened that can be traced in such a way to like it doesn't immediately let them know like, oh, this happened in this exact physical location, but it's something that can be investigated, and like it comes with all kinds of metadata about like the type of computer that it's running on, things like that. And as a result, it gives the Lastech a little bit more of an ability to start kind of piecing together like, okay, that sort of thing would have to be in this part of the ship, and like narrowing down possibilities and like things like that. But let's see, the actual complication or setback. I kind of like the idea of needing to move Emile out of this room as a result of it. Like, something goes wrong in here. Like, he's able to break through, but then something is going to require him to like go up above back to the bazaar or something. He needs something from somebody else as a result of this setback. Something goes wrong in here. Okay, I've got an idea actually. So the complication or setback, it's not that they were able to, it's not related to how Lastech is better able to like deduce where this computer has to be because of the metadata, but they do get that flag that like the code has been opened up on this computer. That reaches back into like the computer in Deuce's office that has access to Lastech information, registers that. And as a result, Deuce, at his own terminal, doing some counter-hacking sort of stuff, says,
"Well, Emile Spencer, you may well have cracked the shell around our code, but what if what you're looking for to delete is a little different than you expect?"
And Deuce starts like sending out over the network, like not even typing at the keyboard, but just like connecting to a port on their body and like updating the code. Basically what's happening is Deuce is betting correctly that Emile is going to be looking for certain things in the jump code, like certain things to identify the jump code itself that are going to be written in certain ways and tagged in certain ways that like correspond to the way things were done when Emile worked at Lastech, which is not that long ago, but they have had some updates since then. And this ship would be running on old code. And so Deuce starts pushing out these kinds of updates that look different, and like Emile sitting there at the computer and suddenly there's like a progress bar on the screen that he doesn't recognize. He's like, what the hell? And the progress bar completes, and then the code in front of him completely shifts. And he sees that all, and it's like unrecognizable as like how exactly it's written. It's almost like it's encrypted now. And in like a very sophisticated way that would be hard for him to just like crack right here in person. It would be much easier to find out how it is encrypted and get the decryption key. And so I think that's the complication is he has access to the code, but he can't really read it because it's like all kinds of ciphered with new ways of writing things that are just inscrutable to what he was looking. He can't just search for the right things anymore and just delete them. They're hidden in layers of obscurity. And so Emile recognizes, like, clearly this came from the outside. He doesn't know how, like, it must be a Lastech thing. He doesn't know how, like, how they're aware of what's going on. He's still not aware of the microphone on his body or anything like that. But he knows, like, okay, shit, I need to take care of this. It got an update from the outside. That shouldn't be. I need to disconnect it from the network. Which I think is a process well in its own right. That, like, doing that, we're talking about some major, like, to not damage anything related to the jump drive or accidentally send it in, like, doing weird emergency kind of stuff, because there's probably protocols in case that like, anything weird happens. Like, the ship might do some strange retaliatory things if he doesn't do this all in the right order and, like, make sure that it's done in such a way that, like, it's expected. But Emile starts working on that really quickly with another face danger with, like, there's going to be a lot of probably face danger with wits with a +1 until he gets out of here. But he does this to try and properly disconnect it from the network. Wits with a +1, and we get, okay, a nice strong hit. Don't need to burn momentum even to get it. I'm successful in mark progress. I don't have to tick up the 1 out of 6. So Emile's successfully able to disconnect it from the network, but recognizes, like, he's still, so, like, it's not going to get any future changes or updates, which would have been a real bear, but it's still set up in such a way that he can't actually really read and manipulate the code. And so he recognizes that this must be a Lastech thing. He's got to get the decryption key and find out, like, how do they do it now? He's got to get the decryption for it and figure out how do they write their code now. And recognizes that probably the best way to find that out would be in Deuce's office, or at least in that area of the ship where Lastech is set up. If he can find somebody's laptop there, anything up to date, he could use that to kind of reverse engineer how is it decrypted, or, like, there may even be a hardware piece in there that's a decryptor he could steal. So we're going to zoom out from this moment to moment, and this is now a time where Emile is going to try and secure an advantage by using the already mapped tunnels of the underground to get as close as possible into the Lastech area of the ship and, like, near Deuce's office without being seen by them. Because they're still not specifically aware of the underground to his knowledge. I'm going to represent that as a quick secure an advantage with the scene challenge moves. This is going to be a shadow move because it's definitely about stealth and trickery to try and sneak up as best as possible. So he sneaks into the area, but he's definitely got the benefit of the underground that'll help make it, like, even if he misses, that'll definitely color, like, how bad it could possibly be. So we make a secure an advantage with shadow with high momentum, and we get, oh wow, I rolled a 9 and a 10 on those dice. I could burn momentum to make that into a weak hit, but that's all I would get with it, and I'd have to take my 10 momentum all the way down. Otherwise, it's a miss. I fail or my assumptions betray you, fill a clock segment, and pay the price. And the difference is on a weak hit, I'd be able to be successful, and I could take either 2 momentum back or a +1 on my next move. Which I think, honestly, this is kind of what I've been building the momentum for. I am going to burn it. I'm going to turn this into a weak hit, so I'm successful at, like, getting into position anyway. This doesn't allow me to fill in more of the progress bar, but I get into position in the Lastech area, which will give me a +1 on my next move. The real dangerous thing was going to be another stealth move, a shadow move, where Emile needs to sneak out of the hidey hole with the right timing to indeed, like, steal a laptop or, like, find hardware he can use to decrypt this thing. And again, we're not moment to moment on this, so, like, that's just all going to be wrapped up in one quick move before we continue moving through this scene challenge, through different sorts of challenges along the way. So this is a shadow with a +1 move, and we get, all right, a weak hit. So it's the same as before, where both tracks are going to make progress. There's a complication to it. So I get to 3 out of 10 boxes, but they get to 2 out of 6. We're actually kind of neck and neck in that way. Like, they're slightly ahead. They've reached a perfect third of their track, whereas I am only at 30%. But I don't have to fill mine all the way necessarily. So what's the complication or setback to this? Oh, I mean, why don't we make this, like, I'm successful, but there's a complication or setback. I think I'm going to be followed. I get the decryption hardware, but somebody's going to follow Emile on the way back as he goes back into the tunnels, and they learn about the underground, which gives them a much better way to like start trying to figure out the way Emile did, where is this place to look for. They find the underground and even find all the way back to like, oh, let's actually pick this up in the underground itself. Emile recognizes he's like, too late. Once he's already in there, he's being followed and he needs to lose this guy. So we're going to do this as a face danger with speed, with edge, because he's going to try and use his speed, mobility, his agility, his knowledge of this place to like, it's a pretty complicated network, and Emile has the benefit of having it mapped. And at this point, he has his AR system back, so it can help him calculate a good way to like, actually, yeah, let's do that first. I'm going to secure an advantage with wits and try and have my system like plot out a good course to like help Emile not get lost, basically. So let's do that. Let's do a quick wits secure an advantage first to try and build up my momentum a little higher. And we get, all right, another weak hit. I don't have enough momentum to do anything about it. So I can either take 2 momentum or add 1 to my next move. I wanted to build up my momentum with this, and that's what we're going to do. I probably should have gotten the 1 to the move, but we're picking up the pace here in all kinds of ways. I like the idea of doing the momentum with that. So let's do the face danger move as he tries to lose the tail with edge. So we get edge. There's no +1 on this move because of the choice I made. And all right, a weak hit again. So same as before, we're successful, but we mark progress. Now they're marking progress faster than I am. They're now up to halfway through, and I'm only at 40%. So Emile is able to lose the tail, but the complication is if he's able to lose the tail, then they can't possibly know about the route that goes directly to the penthouse. They don't learn that. Oh, how about this? How about the complication is that whoever is down there is tech savvy enough to recognize, like, perhaps when Emile was mapping out this place, he attached this puck to a thick power cable and like used that to pulse out and like make a map. Perhaps the puck itself like made a port that's still there. There's like some kind of evidence left behind that this Lastech employee recognizes. They radio it in. People put their heads together, and like it takes a team of them to think about what it got used for and how to use it themselves, because Emile's a player character. He's savvier than just the average Lastech employee. He's a special dude. But over time, they're able to put together what Emile did to map this place and recognize that that's the key to finding it. And so it gives them that 1 pip of progress further, as they make their own, they now make their own map of the underground. It's just going to take them a little bit of time. I think that does mean eventually they would learn how to get to the penthouse, because once they make their map, it'll work in kind of the same way. And so they'd see the route that goes up there. But it's nothing they learn immediately. That's going to take them time to be able to get up to the penthouse itself. But Emile gets back there, he takes the elevator down, and he's going to start the process of decrypting this code with this with the key that he has. This is going to be another wits face danger with a +1 from just my tech asset. All right, getting a strong hit. So I mark progress without them making any of their own, bringing me up to we're now tied. I've got 5 boxes out of 10. They've got 3 out of 6. Emile is successfully able to decrypt this code, and it makes and it's disconnected from the network, so it's all making sense again. But he knows the problem is like he's gonna have to leave eventually, and like clearly they've learned about this place. And I think the next thing I'm going to do, like he starts working on the code and everything. Like he sets an automated process going to start like pruning through and finding all the Lastech stuff so that it can be efficiently removed. And like he sets that process in motion, but it's going to take some time. It's running in the background while he's got the computer like finding all of the things, which he'll then have to work on the right way to untangle it and like get it removed that doesn't fuck over the ship. But while that's happening in the background, I think the next thing he's going to do to actually try and make progress is he's going to go back up top to talk to Thorn, actually, and warn him about how that Lastech. He tells him like, "I was followed. Lastech's aware that something's going on here. It's only a matter of time. They took me into the underground." Oh, and it's still a shame that Emile doesn't know that he's got this microphone on him right now. He doesn't know he's being bugged. maybe there's a chance that that Thorn will recognize it while he's in here and like make a big deal out of it. But what he's going to try and do, like Emile knows there's some kind of trap in this room. He just doesn't know how. And so this face danger is going to be with Hart to try and get Thorn to let him know about like, it's like, I know you have some kind of trap in here underneath the coffee cup. You didn't use it during our conversation, but Lastech may well be finding their way in here as we speak. And I need to know what are the tools I can utilize to try and stall them more and more. So please, tell me what the deal is with the coffee cup so that we might be able to use it. And let's roll that Hart roll. So face danger with Hart. Okay, that's a miss. I could burn momentum to turn it into a weak hit, which I'm going to do. I don't want this to be a full-on miss. So we get a weak hit. We're successful, and both things mark progress as before. So I'm up to 6 out of 10. They're up to 4 out of 6. They're taking a lead here. So there's a complication or setback as Thorn introduces him to the stasis field. I don't want it to be a full-on betrayal or anything like that. That's I don't want it's not going to be that. Thorn hasn't turned coat on him. But perhaps the complication is just that, you know, Thorn demonstrates it and like it makes the stasis field. But in so doing, that makes such an immense power spike that it, you know, the Lastech employees down below, they see that like, oh shit, like a huge power draw up here. They put it together like that's all the way at the top, right by the elevator. It draws their eyes over. They find their map and they find the way up there and recognize like, there's the way to go. And they are on their way now. Emile is going to have to find a way to like barricade himself in there for like, because he hasn't even gotten started on the actual code pruning, which we discussed like would probably take like, this could take like a week. As Emile learns about the stasis field, they're on their way, and it's a complication. So he doesn't know, like, they don't like burst into the area while he's up there and able to use the stasis field, but he's considering like how they could, I suppose in a way that last move could have been better suited as a secure and advantage than face danger, but it's too late. I'm keeping it as is. He heads back down to work on the code with now, however, you know, knowing how it works, he is going to rig up a system to try and like put that on, like he doesn't want it to have to be manually triggered by Thorn or anything like that. He wants to set up a more foolproof system that will trigger this if Lastech comes into the room. So I'm going to, because we're in a scene challenge, I'm not going to use the full-on rules that I have for like ad hocing a device, but it's like he's doing that. He's setting up, he's like Kevin McAllistering this place, setting it up as a trap with Thorn's permission there. With Thorn's permission, but he sets it up to like there's a way to disable it as you go in. Like there's a way to get in and out of this room without triggering it. There's like a hidden disabling device like on the inside of like the leg of the couch in the side of the room. So like if you go into the room and immediately go over to that couch and reach in and like toggle it off, it will be disabled for a time. Basically until the next time that the door is open. Like it's set to go off. It's like activated when somebody opens up the door to the room, and then goes off when they're in the right zone, unless you've disabled it, in which case it waits until the next time that it's been activated. But Emile's going to try and set this up with secure and advantage with wits and this time a +1 from his gearhead, because I think that this is indeed him repurposing or modifying equipment or technology. So we'll get a +1 to the move and take 1 momentum on a hit. So wits with a +1 for this, and we get, all right, a strong hit. So we get both of these, 2 momentum from the move and a 1 on our next move. And we get 1 more momentum from my gearhead. So let's put my momentum all the way up at +5. And now Emile heads down below with that set up. And we're going to do the next wits with a +1. Well, technically a +2 because I have a +1 from the secure and advantage and then a +1 from my tech asset. Like, this is just representative of the long form, like day after day, working on untangling this code with the knowledge that like he's going to have to stay in here for a while, getting really sweaty. Like he's not going to be able to, he doesn't trust his ability to go up. because he doesn't want to be locked out with Lastech getting there first. So he's going to stay in here for a long time. Let's make that move, though. Face danger, wits with a +2. Feeling pretty good about that. It is only a weak hit, though. We got a 9 after all that, but one of the dice was a 10. We had a 10 and an 8. So we're successful in mark progress, but also encounter a complication or setback. And what I envision for this is very clear. As they fill 5 out of 6 clock segments, like Lastech is upstairs. They're totally there. They have burst into the office. They are above. And I think they are... The only thing holding them back right now is they are caught in the stasis field. But, as we determined, it's not perfect stasis. They can move, but just much more slowly. And perhaps there's an alarm that Emile's computer registers an alarm event that the trap has been triggered. And perhaps it even hooks into a thing that allows him to connect to the security camera that's behind the bookshelf. And he looks through it and verifies, it's not that Thorn accidentally set it off. Those are Lastech employees that are all there. And he can witness that they seem to have enough of them to certainly outnumber Emile in a fight. Though they're not strong fighters or anything like that, but they do outnumber him. And they have all kinds of gear on them to be able to lock down the computer. And they're trying to work their way in here to do that. So let's see, what all can Emile do before this last pip fills in? And we're locked in on just however this goes. So Emile knows he doesn't have a lot of time. They're going to work their way through the stasis field eventually, but best he can work on now is just try and set an automated process in motion. He focuses indeed just on the pruning of their code. Again, he can fill in additional jump code later. He can change it to the more open source stuff. But most importantly is to take out all of the Lastech stuff first. So he sets up an automated process to indeed go through with that. And what he's working on now are basically protections, his own shell that he needs to recreate of security that's not Lastech security to lock them out from being able to do anything short of destroying the computer or shutting down the power to it or something like that. If this computer is running, they'd have to break through his security. So let's do that. Wits with a +1 as he tries to just set up his own layer of encryption to lock them out and have it just go automated in the background while he contends with what might be going on upstairs. All right, I get a weak hit, which is perfect. It means I get one more hit of progress. We get this automated process in motion, but they fill in their 6 out of 6 clock, which means we have to resolve this move. Was Emile able to get enough protections on his thing to keep them from interrupting the process before he can delete all the code? Well, that's a question for next time. After so many episodes, I think this might be the first time we actually use the scene challenge rules in full, and I think without mistakes, and in a situation that truly is what a scene challenge is meant to represent. Now, we did it as more of a montage and less of a action-filled one scene, but I think that's part of the idea as well. Anyway, I was just thinking about that as I was editing this, that I don't know that I've ever properly represented it before, but I think we did this time. This episode should be coming out... If I've done all my planning correctly, this should be the first episode that comes out after I return from PAX and had a chance to meet a bunch of new people and tell them they should check out this podcast. So if you're one of them, hey, thank you for actually doing that. It would be incredibly remarkable since this will come out within days of PAX if you listen to 18 episodes in that time. If you did, I guess I all the more appreciate you. If you are one of those people that I met at PAX while doing line entertainment, I'd love to hear more about which person you are, and if you do it soon enough, I may even still remember you apart from just the vague memories of entertaining lines. Anyway, that's not what you're here for. You're here for the prompts, right? This week, I've decided that it's going to be all about a lie that a child would tell. Up to you how old this child is, but this is not an adult. This is a younger person telling a lie about something, and it should be inspired by the prompts of desolate and liquid. So what's this lie about? Desolate and liquid. Shoot your ideas over to me at starforgedpod@gmail.com. I'm eager to hear them, and of course, if I like it well enough, it'll wind up in the show. But I'm done. I got things to do around here, so just play me out, music.